Welcome to this week's episode of the Lido Loop. I am your host, Jack McCraw. With me, as always, my good friend, who is back on shore again with us one more time, Jesse Barboza. How we doing today, man?
I'm doing good. How was your trip to Disney?
Man, I can't wait to get into it. It was definitely a worthwhile trip. That's one of the things we'll be talking about today. But what are we going to talk about as far as the cruise aspect goes, Jesse?
Yeah, Jack. So Carnival cancels sailings at a popular cruise port for the next few weeks, and Royal Caribbean now charges more for sodas. And could we see Disney Cruise Line expand by acquiring another cruise line?
Yeah, it's certainly very interesting on the cruise side. And on the theme park side, fans at Busch Gardens are up in arms about locker prices. LEGOLAND opens their very own Space Mountain, and Universal finally gives us some more details on the kids resort coming to Frisco this year. That, and we break down my Disney trip on this week's episode of the Lido Loop. So kicking off the show, we're going to talk about the latest and greatest in the cruise world with the cruise news. And Jesse, I'm hearing Carnival is canceling sailings at a popular port for the next few weeks. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, Jack. So many people have definitely heard the news, what's been happening in Mexico with the cartel violence. Carnival Cruise Line has now begun rerouting several other ships and skipping some of the most popular cruise ports. One of them is definitely Puerto Vallarta. So Carnival said that they plan on resuming in the next few weeks as long as the cartel violence has died down. But Jack, I want to ask you, if you were on a trip in Mexico right now, would you feel comfortable stopping or going anywhere, even like Cozumel or anything like that?
To be honest, I would probably stay on the port. I know that some of these excursions that the cruises do, where they go actually into Mexico and do this, I would feel a little bit uneasy, because even when we went to Cozumel, a second we get off of the cruise port, you're actually in Mexico and you see people trying to sell you stuff on the streets or saying, hey, my friend, come over here, let me sell you something. I feel like that could be exponentially worse with everything going on. So at this point, I always felt very uncomfortable, even when I went to Mexico, getting off of the resort or getting away from the port. So no, I probably wouldn't be exploring Mexico at this point in time.
I think I'm the kind of the opposite way. I'm kind of definitely more adventurous, I guess you can say. And I mean, of course, the ports are very, touristy. So they're definitely not set up like, that's not really how Mexico is if you go to a port. It's definitely very made for the white man, I guess you can say. But like I said, I definitely feel fine, especially if you go to places like Mr. Sancho's or Paradise Beach and Cozumel. I think considering that Cozumel's an island, do you think you might do that?
Yeah, Cozumel, I feel like, is the safer, because it is an island off of Mexico, and it's basically a touristy island that people go to for a vacation. It's not, even though it's part of Mexico, it's not actually like where most of the bad things are happening right now, as you would say.
Yeah, exactly. I did make a comparison. It's like how big Mexico is like if something's bad happening in Maine and us in Texas, would we still go to Texas even though something bad's happening in Maine? It's so far away that it probably wouldn't make a difference.
Yeah, I mean, you're at that point, you're so far south of, with the border and kind of where a lot of things are happening right now, that you're just on a little tropical island of paradise. Now, granted, you go off the resort, you're subjugate yourself to any kind of bad things that happen, but I feel like it would be less likely to happen on Cozumel. I personally have never been to Puerto Vallarta, so I really wouldn't know why they would stop sailing over there. But just to answer the question of, is Cozumel safe? I think Cozumel would be pretty safe.
There's a rumor going around, I guess you can say, that a lot of the cartel actually own a lot of the resorts in Mexico. And I ain't gonna lie, I probably could see it, because they say that the cartel, it makes up 1/5 of the Mexican economy, which I think that's kind of a crazy number. So I would not doubt it if the cartel owns a lot of these resorts. But if you own a resort, you would not want that violence to actually be in your resort. So that's what I feel like.
No, they're the safe zones. It's like when the mafia owned the casinos back in the day. It's like, no, we want you to go to the casinos. There's nothing bad's going to happen there. Just don't get involved with anything else. But sure, go to the tourist places where they actually make their money.
Yeah, I definitely agree.
So continuing with the cruise news, tell us a little bit about Royal Caribbean is now charging $5 for a cup of soda? What's going on with that, Jesse?
Yeah, so anyone that has bought the soda drink package on Royal Caribbean, they gave you a free cup that you can use at the freestyle machine, which, if you don't know, the freestyle machine has pretty much all the different Cokes, and you can add different flavors in it, like vanilla, cherry.
That's where I get my vanilla Cokes at the movie theater.
Yeah, and everyone loves it. It's fantastic because it, instead of just having the basics of everything, you can get, make your own thing. But now Royal Caribbean is now charging $4.99 per cup. And this cup isn't just like a normal cup. It's kind of like if you've gone to Universal, they'd have like a RFID chip. It's like a souvenir cup too. And you have to have that cup in order for the freestyle machine to work.
Sort of like the same way that you brought up Universal. Disney is the same way at their resorts. You get one cup at the resort, you pay $10, you can get unlimited refills. So it makes sense from a business perspective, but this is something that used to be free, correct?
Yeah, it's definitely free. But I wonder if Royal Caribbean started doing this because people would take other people's cups and so they would share with other people, or a lot of people thinks that it's just more of a money grab. And yes, it may just be $5, but at $5 here and then $5 here, it kind of adds up.
I mean, imagine bringing a family of four. That's an easy $20 that Royal Caribbean made, and you haven't even spent any money in the casino or any other activities on the ship. So I feel like that's just kind of the norm, like especially with, being big theme park people. If you want to get refills at Six Flags, you have to buy the souvenir cup. Same with Universal. Same with Disney. Pretty much every theme park company does this. So it makes sense that this is on cruises now. I mean, it's just the nickel and diming that, we're essentially used to at this point in any kind of like tourist industry.
Yeah, but so if you don't want to get the cup, you can still, with the drink package, still just get your sodas at the bar like any other cruise line.
And you just get them in a can instead.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm not sure if they have fountain drinks on Royal Caribbean. I'm sure they do at the bar, because a lot of times when you make like a Jack and Coke, they usually have like a fountain Coke. So I'm sure you can still get that. But yeah, you have until March 15th of this year, 2026, to purchase. If you pre-purchase it by then, you'll still get the free cup. But if you wait till after that date, you will have to pay the $5 fee.
Yeah, and Royal Caribbean just wants more and more of your money. They're starting to look like another one of their competitors out there in Disney. And we heard a pretty interesting rumor about the Disney Cruise Line. Jesse, could they potentially be acquiring another company?
So an article on Yahoo says that Jim Cramer actually made a call saying that Disney should acquire Norwegian Cruise Line. What do you think, Jack? Do you think that should happen?
Honestly, that sounds so similar to when Disney acquired Fox back in 2019, where it would just increase their catalog of ships. Because as of right now, they only have 7 ships and 6 of them are American ships, whereas NCL has 20 ships. So already Disney would essentially be more than doubling their fleet of ships. And then they could also rebrand those ships to Disney ships, or even have their own separate brand, like have the main Disney brand and then have Norwegian by Disney, so they can keep it maybe a little bit more adult. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I definitely think so. I think that they should probably keep it separate, or maybe they could even split the fleet and make like half of them acquired actually Disney name, and then potentially keep the other in Norwegian by Disney. Like, I like how you said that. They should definitely say that, like Norwegian by Disney. I think it kind of sounds good.
Yeah, I mean, I bring up the Fox comparison again because Fox still makes scary movies. Fox still makes adult movies, and Disney can't put their name on these scary or R-rated movies just because they're Disney. I don't think Disney has ever even made an R-rated movie in their company's history. But if they can release them through Fox, they can still make money that way and then still release them through that name. Whereas like an NCL, Disney could still keep the casinos, still keep, they already have bars on Disney cruises, but, keep the adult themed entertainment on NCL that they otherwise couldn't have on Disney. And, maybe even throw in like some adult characters, like have the Simpsons and Family Guy on NCL, but still have Mickey Mouse on the Disney ships.
Yeah, I think they should definitely make adults only Disney ship in a way, kind of like with, I don't know, Family Guy or whatever. I think that'd be kind of funny.
Yeah, Planet of the Apes and Avatar. Those are the other two like big adult franchises.
But honestly, I would feel like Universal. I know we kind of talked about this like one of the first episodes, probably about 4 or 5 episodes ago. I'm thinking that Universal could potentially be in the market of getting in the cruise line market.
Yeah, and I think that if Disney were to, I mean, again, this is all speculation. This is, this person's opinion of what Disney should do. So none of this is actually set in stone or going to happen. But having said that, if Disney were to acquire a brand like NCL and make a more adult themed cruises, that could definitely put Universal, give a little bit of run for their money for Universal, because that's the market Universal's trying to get into. It's like theme parks but with an adult twist, kind of like how their theme parks are right now compared to Disney.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like if I was Universal, I would do like what Disney would do, and instead of Disney buying Norwegian, it would be Universal.
And that way you can probably keep some of the Norwegian heads in office because they know how to run a cruise industry where Universal does not. Universal knows how to make good theme parks, and as we'll talk about a little bit later, they know how to build a park from scratch. But it would definitely be one more thing that Universal could get into to combat Disney. Because imagine if they acquired all 20 of those ships, they already have double the amount of ships that Disney would have, and they could, lightly theme some of them to start off and then start getting brand new ships completely themed to their Universal properties.
Yeah, I mean Disney definitely has the capital for it. They're definitely making a lot of money, so they can easily acquire Norwegian and not lose any money.
Which is really interesting because Norwegian Cruise Line is already trying to rebrand themselves, like with the commercials that were happening earlier this year with the colonial people celebrating America's.
But then they went away with it like the very next month. They kind of stopped talking about it.
Such a quick change page. Maybe this industry insider knows a little something that we don't. And we'll be sure to link his article in the YouTube description. But transitioning over to theme park news, Jesse, how would you feel if you had to ride a roller coaster, but you were forced to not only use a locker, but pay for it as well?
I definitely think that's ridiculous because, I mean, if you go to Universal, Disney, or Six Flags, if the ride requires you to put all your stuff away in a locker, they always give you a ticket so that you can get it back without having to pay a fee. I think if you want to ride a roller coaster, they should make it easy to ride the roller coaster.
Right. And that's how it's been done since the whole locker initiative started. I understand, like, we rode the Incredible Hulk, Velocicoaster. Almost every single ride at Universal that's a roller coaster requires a locker. But at Busch Gardens in Tampa, Iron Gwazi is now requiring guests to not only use a locker, but pay $4 to use said locker. Now, I do believe that once you use it, you can use it over and over again, but it's the principle. If you're going to require your guests to use a locker, that's fine. Make it free. What Busch Gardens is doing right now is that they're forcing everyone to pay $4 for a locker. Now, I get it. If someone doesn't want to ride Iron Gwazi, you could just have everyone hold their stuff. But that's not always a luxury that everybody has. So I just think this is Busch Gardens and the SeaWorld Corporation being greedy. And I hope that this isn't a industry change that we are going to see. Would this affect you wanting to go to Busch Gardens?
I don't think it would affect me going to Busch Gardens. I just think that I think that they probably decided to do this because I think they were finding people were using the lockers potentially for other rides as well, and they decided, you know what, we need to start charging for this.
Yeah, and in certain Six Flags parks, you can rent a locker for the day. Just you have a backpack, put it up. I mean, almost every water park you have to pay for a locker if you want to put your stuff up and just go into, the pools and stuff. So this is not a new concept. It's just this is the first time it's been required for a ride. Like, hey, if you want to ride this ride, it's almost essentially like you have to pay an extra $4 to ride this ride so that way you can put your stuff up.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of times I'm not, to be honest, if I do rent a locker like that at the main entrance, I don't even keep my credit card information. A lot of times I don't keep that on me. So if you're waiting in line to wait, I'm not sure exactly where the lockers are at. I guess is it at the beginning, Jack, or is it like when you get to the front?
Yeah, I think the lockers are like before you get in line, you go through a metal detector, and then from there they can just sort of like what it was when we rode the Incredible Hulk. Like they won't even let you get in line if anything goes off in the metal detector.
So talking about the next topic, Jack, I hear that Legoland is opening a brand new ride that could rival Space Mountain.
So yes, it's called Galactica Coaster, and it's a new indoor roller coaster that opened at Legoland, Florida, and it will also open in California as well. So this is definitely of the trend in these, hot climate environments of indoor roller coasters. Something that, has been done with Guardians of the Galaxy a couple years ago at Epcot, and now with Galactica coaster at Legoland. And I showed you the point of view video. It's a very short ride, but it's very reminiscent of a Space Mountain or a Guardians of the Galaxy, where a lot of it is in the dark and you have little spotlights of stars to see. It's certainly a perfect roller coaster for kids to ride as their first go-to coaster. And good on Legoland for, actually adding some rides that adults could enjoy as well, because I've not personally been to Legoland, but it's definitely a more kid-friendly park. And I think this is another way for them to get more into the thrill-seeking industry. Oh, go ahead.
So, Jack, what's going on with this new Universal Kids Park?
So, yes, so they have started to make small announcements as far as what is coming to the park now. We have new details on the Shrek area, where it's going to have not only a Shrek and Fiona meet and greet, it's also going to have a Shrek dark ride, and tells the tale of how Shrek and Fiona met, and probably the whole tale of Shrek to begin with. There's also going to be a SpongeBob land, where they're going to have a Mrs. Puff's boating school attraction. Sounds to me like it's going to be one of those antique taxi style rides, but it's just going to be boats that you're supposedly going to be driving better than SpongeBob himself. Pineapple Paradise, which is a play area, Muscle Beach, and of course there's going to be meet and greets with Patrick, Sandy, and SpongeBob and Squidward. So if you want to meet SpongeBob, now's that best time to do so. And finally, more details have come out about the Jurassic World Adventure Camp, where they're actually going to have a roller coaster, Jurassic World Cretaceous Coaster. It says it's a kiddie coaster, so we're not going to get too excited. There's also going to be a double helix spin ride themed to Mr. DNA, a kid-sized drop tower, some lookout towers, and meet and greets with other dinosaurs.
So, Jack, for people who don't know, what do you think the age range is going to be for this park?
It sounds like it's going to be kids ages 5 to 10. It sounds like it's definitely more themed towards, younger Universal kids. And I do think that this is a test park that Universal is doing in not only Frisco, but the Texas area as a whole. And if this is successful, they want to have more Universal Kids theme parks all around the country. And Texas would be a good testing ground because, as you know, here we have 2 Six Flags parks, 2 Schlitterbahn, as many water parks as you can count on your fingers. And right up the road in Oklahoma, we have Frontier City.
But, to be honest, I still love SpongeBob. I'm not going to lie. And Shrek, everyone knows that they got a lot of adult humor in both of those movies.
I would like to think that there's going to be a little bit of, adult jokes in that Shrek ride just to keep the families entertained. I think SpongeBob is definitely a cool intellectual property that Universal is introducing into their parks, which you and I had a conversation about in a previous episode of SpongeBob should go to Islands of Adventure. I feel like that Toon Lagoon area with, themed to Popeye and, Bluto and Dudley Do-Right, that's just so dated. Maybe they're testing to see if people like the SpongeBob ride, and eventually that'll replace that area.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely think SpongeBob is definitely the way to go. I don't know why they haven't really made a big deal in SpongeBob. Everyone loves SpongeBob.
I mean, he's the only reason you watch Nickelodeon anymore. I think it's now become the 24-hour SpongeBob network. And, I think it's one of the most popular shows on Paramount Plus is still SpongeBob. So, yeah, he's definitely an iconic character that Universal could use in their marketing going forward, similar like they do with Jurassic Park, Harry Potter, and now the Nintendo properties.
So when is this park supposed to open up again?
As of right now, it still says it's opening sometime in 2026. I believe that they're aiming for a summer opening time. So maybe, I'm going to say late June, early July, but that's just me speculating and guessing. And again, this is going to be in Frisco, Texas, just north of Dallas. This will be Universal's first venture outside of both Florida and California, and first venture into Texas.
All right, Jack, so let's now talk about your Disney trip. Before I get on the main questions about the park itself, let me ask you some pre-park questions. First thing, how'd you get to the airport?
So we flew out of Houston and we used Spirit. We didn't get any bag. Well, that's not true. We got one checked bag, but everything else we were able to use backpacks. And for the most part, Spirit was very cooperative with that, at least on the Houston side of things. We'll get to the Orlando side, but we flew from Houston International Airport to Orlando International Airport, and it was a pretty smooth flight.
And it was a direct flight?
It was a direct flight, yes.
And if you don't mind asking, what was the price of the ticket?
So we got a steal because we use the airport method. So for those of you that don't know, with Spirit, if you go directly to the Spirit kiosk in the airport, you can buy tickets for a fraction of the cost because you're not paying the online fees. You're just paying the base fare of Spirit. So for me and my friend that I went with, it was about $55 a person round trip. And that's, including taxes and fees at the airport. Online, it would have been about $80 to $90 round trip. So overall, it was still a cheap price, but at the airport, it makes it significantly cheaper.
Yeah, I remember when we went to Vegas and we got Spirit. I think it was like $80 for me and my wife round trip, and you definitely can't beat that price.
Yeah, the best deal I've ever got was $50 total for two tickets to Miami when I went to go see Astro Spring Training.
I know people hate on Spirit, but hey, if you're trying to get somewhere fast and quick, and they actually have one of the lowest accident rates of all the major cruise lines. Not cruise lines,
airlines, yes. Yeah, with Spirit, I mean, you get what you pay for. If you wanted a drink or a snack, that's going to be an extra charge. If you want to pick your seat, that's an extra charge. Depending which terminal you fly out of, if your backpack is too big, they might make you pay for it, which almost happened to two of my friends in Orlando. And, when me, you, and your family went to our cruise last time out of Cape Canaveral, that almost happened to us as well. But luckily, we were able to sneak into the plane.
And luckily, we live in Texas, so everything is within 3 hours usually. So you're not sitting on this uncomfortable seat more than 3 hours, typically.
Yeah, it's good that you're kind of in the center part of America. I think the longest flight I ever took with Spirit was to Los Angeles, and that was 3.5 hours, which at that point you start getting a little uncomfortable, but anything under 4 hours, I think you'd be fine on a Spirit flight. I mean, it gets you from point A to point B the quickest way possible. And I've flown Spirit several times, especially to Orlando.
So once you got into the Orlando airport, what did y'all first do?
So we first got our checked bag from the carousel. Then we went to ground transportation where we got a rental car. It was a Dodge Durango, and it was $182 from this rental car company called New. Now, a lot of you listening probably use Hertz or Enterprise Rent-A-Car. Orlando oftentimes has cheaper rental cars that work perfectly fine. So the reason I use this company called New, I've used it several times. They promise you a cheap car, but they try to sell you on insurance. And, I guess this is with any rental car company, but that's how they really make their money is they sell you insurance for your trip. And it's, a couple $100. First time I ever did it, I didn't realize that you didn't have to use their insurance. But for the most part, it's very simple, very straightforward. I want to use my own insurance, and most car insurances cover rental car accidents as well, depending on the policy you get. But as long as you use your own insurance, you can save a significant amount of money and not pay their insurance.
So what hotel did you stay at, and was it like a Disney Resort hotel?
So actually, we ended up staying off property simply because we were actually going to go to Universal on this trip, but we changed it to Disney because we had more people join us that wanted to go to Disney. So we actually stayed at a Spark by Hilton, which was really close to Universal. But the hotel was actually only 20 minutes away from Disney World, so it worked out pretty well. What we did to make up for that time difference was we just left a little bit earlier to get to the parks. And, there wasn't really a whole lot of traffic going from that part of Orlando to Disney because with Disney being pretty southeast of Orlando, almost like 40 minutes away from downtown, most of the traffic of people commuting to work is actually going northbound to where downtown Orlando is. And we were kind of in the middle between downtown Orlando and Disney. Not as many people were going that way as when we went to the parks.
So what parks did you go to?
We went to Magic Kingdom and Hollywood Studios. We went to Hollywood Studios the first day, and that was a pretty eventful day, to say the least. And then Magic Kingdom, we stayed there from open to close, and that was certainly one of the better days we had as well.
How long were you there for?
We ended up being there from Sunday to Tuesday. So grand total of 4 days, 3 nights. We had one free day where we just kind of explored Orlando. We went to play some gator golf. We went to Icon Park and, ate at some, local restaurants there as well. And I kind of like to have that free day before the flight.
So the parks, how busy were they?
I would say they were pretty standardly busy. There were certainly times where lines did get pretty high up there. And granted, we went in late February with not a whole lot going on. One of the workers said that some kids are on winter break right now, so that could be why we were seeing a lot of lines. But to be honest, there wasn't a whole lot of kids this time around, so it was mostly, adults. There were a fair share amount of kids, but with them still being in school throughout most of the country, the only kids we really saw were, foreigners, like from different countries coming on their Disney vacation.
Did you buy the Lightning Pass?
We did. And it's such a worthwhile investment that I would highly recommend anyone who goes to Disney do it. So, how Lightning Lane differs from the traditional Fast Pass that Disney used to offer is that you now have to pay for it. So, and different rides are tiered. So, for example, at Hollywood Studios, we were only allowed to pick one high tiered Fast Pass between Tower of Terror, Millennium Falcon, Smuggler's Run, Rock and Roller Coaster, and Toy Story Mania. So we ended up choosing Rock and Roller Coaster, and then for other Fast Passes, we did Star Tours, and we did do Tower of Terror. That's one of the lower tiered ones. So those were our three ones. But as soon as you use a Fast Pass, you can get another one. So the only ride we had to wait in line for in Hollywood Studios was Rise of Resistance, and that was the ride that we rope dropped. We got to the park a little before 9 a.m. and we were able to go immediately to Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, and we waited about 55 minutes on that one. Everything else was essentially a walk-on. We did Star Tours, Rock and Roller Coaster, Tower of Terror, Millennium Falcon, Smuggler's Run, all with no line. The ones we didn't do were Slinky Dog Dash, Alien Swirling Saucer, and Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway. We did have a Fast Pass for that, but we ended up leaving a little bit early just because of the weather. But I would highly recommend a Fast Pass, especially if you could ride essentially almost every single park or every single ride of the park like we did at Hollywood Studios.
So what was the price of the Lightning Pass?
So it comes out to around $27 a day per person. So I understand a family of four, you're spending an additional $100 in addition to the $300+ you spent, just for 2 tickets. I mean, so Disney, it is a luxury now to have that Lightning Lane, but it makes your wait times go significantly quicker. When we were at Magic Kingdom, we ended up getting Fast Passes for It's a Small World, Haunted Mansion, Pirates of the Caribbean, Peter Pan's Flight, which all those rides, with the exception of It's a Small World, do tend to get a very long line, so that made us able to ride a whole lot more rides quicker.
Honestly, for $30, pretty much less than $30, that's probably cheaper compared to Six Flags or Universal.
Well, because if you think about it, Universal's Express Pass is around $200 a person, and for the most part, you really don't need it unless you're at Epic Universe. I mean, when you and I and your family went to Islands, I think the longest wait we had was like 30 minutes, with the exception of Hagrid's, which we just didn't have time to do. And for $30 a person, I think it's a worthwhile investment, because even at Six Flags, it's probably almost, if not more than $100 now to get whatever their Flash Pass or whatever it's called now.
To me, it seems like there'd be a lot of people with it. Did it seem like that?
Yes, the Fast Pass lines did fill up very quickly. Certain rides like Star Tours, probably not a lot of people do have Fast Pass for, because it's relatively a short line. But the more popular rides definitely have a higher tiered Fast Pass, and some rides. So just at Hollywood Studios and Magic Kingdom, for example, Rise of the Resistance and Slinky Dog Dash are an additional charge. So that's where it starts really getting really expensive. And if you really want to ride one of those two rides, that's an additional $25 on top of the $25 Lightning Lane. So then that gets more expensive. We tried to do that with Tron, but it got sold out. And Tron and Seven Dwarfs Mine Train are two other rides that you can pay extra to ride and get that Fast Pass. But it's also a way for Disney to, these rides will always have a line no matter what with Tron and Seven Dwarfs Mine Train. It's a way for people like, hey, if you want to pay extra, you can do it. And a lot of people do utilize that, especially if it's only $25 is what they're thinking. But I mean, it definitely adds up a lot over time. So the Lightning Lane Pass, that's just $27 flat, and you can ride multiple rides. I recommend that more than the individual Lightning Lane Pass for Tron, Seven Dwarfs, Rise of Resistance, or Slinky Dog, unless you absolutely have someone in your party or want to ride those rides.
So if you only have one day, which park would you go to?
Man, that's a good question. Those are the two best Disney parks in my opinion. It depends on what you're going for, but I would say Magic Kingdom just because that is the traditional park, and there is so many more rides there than at Hollywood Studios because Hollywood Studios only has 9 rides total. They have a bunch of shows as well, but if you want to go for rides, definitely Magic Kingdom.
And what was your favorite rides?
It had to have been Rise of the Resistance. I talked about it in last week's episode that I didn't get a chance to ride it the last 2 times I went to a Disney park that had that ride, just because the line was so long. We made it a point to get to Rise of the Resistance, and I would say if you don't have a lightning lane, it is best to ride that first thing in the morning because that line is only going to get longer as the day progresses.
How has the parks changed since your last visit in 2020?
I mean, there's have definitely been more rides added. Hollywood Studios actually closed the Muppets ride, and they're building a brand new Monsters Inc. themed land in the place of it. And speaking of the Muppets, we also rode Rock and Roller Coaster, which is now going to be rethemed to the Muppets coming this summer.
And what you said that you off can or off mic, you were talking about how they weren't really theming as much to Aerosmith.
Yeah, so they tore down a lot of the theming. Like there was a pre-show where Aerosmith would, say, "Hey, we got backstage passes for you. Come to our roller coaster." They completely shut off the pre-show, so it's just a line. And there's a bunch of that era of rock memorabilia where you see Def Leppard, you see Metallica, and you see like older bands like Leonard Skinner on the walls as well. And it's a homage to that era of rock, but aside from that, that's the only theming left in the roller coaster besides some cheap cardboard cutouts on the roller coaster and Steven Tyler's vocals. I think we heard Sweet Emotion on the roller coaster. So we were able to ride that and that was a good send off. But the parks, Hollywood Studios hasn't changed too much since my last visit. Mickey Minnie's Runaway Railway opened since then. But for Magic Kingdom, Tron was definitely a big attraction that they just pretty much built because they had the land to do so. And now with Magic, they also closed the Rivers of America because they're building a Cars theme land over there. And of course, Splash Mountain got rethemed to Tiana's Bayou Adventure, which I have a fun story when we get to that point.
All right. So did you see any of the shows?
We did. We saw the Indiana Jones Stunt Spectacular when we were at Hollywood Studios, and I saw that years ago. And it's essentially the same show, but it's very cool to see how these stunt actors perform, and there's giant explosives at the end, so that's definitely worth the watch. At Magic Kingdom, we saw 2 parades, and because they now have a daytime and a nighttime parade, and of course we stayed for the fireworks, which it's been the same since when I last went, but it's still a great fireworks show to end the trip.
How long does a fireworks show usually last?
About 20 to 30 minutes, I want to say. So yeah, it is a pretty long show, and Disney does not save any kind of Disney does not spare any expense when it comes to the fireworks because they light up the sky. And we didn't stay for Fantasmic, which is arguably their other greatest show on Disney property, just because it was really cold and we did have to leave kind of early. So we only at Hollywood Studios from open to around 5 p.m., but Magic Kingdom we stayed there from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m.
Okay, so did you see any characters or meet any of them?
At Hollywood Studios, it's a little bit easier to meet some of the characters. Now, I'm not a big let's meet the characters person, maybe because I'm an adult, and I know that there's an adult inside that costume, but there was no line for Frozone, so we met him, and he did have his super suit on. Oh. The other one we met were some stormtroopers, and there was a funny interaction where your brother pointed at me and said, "Hey, this guy's a Jedi, and the stormtrooper looked me up and down and said, "You are not the Jedi we're looking for."
So did they were they kind of like joking around with everybody, or did just that one altercation?
No, they joke.
I really want to call it altercation, but
Yeah, I wasn't fighting any stormtroopers. I promise. I wasn't part of the resistance in that point. But yeah, they joke around with like I was wearing a Millennium Falcon T-shirt, and they're like, "Oh, you're a resistance, aren't you?" And these stormtroopers they know how to mess with guests. You've seen that viral video of if there's one Jedi left, it's not you. So they definitely they play with the guests is probably a good way to put it.
did you see Chewbacca?
No, I didn't see him this time. I just maybe he's off the Millennium Falcon. I just must have missed him.
I've definitely seen all the videos on YouTube where they have Chewbacca, and like someone's making a sound, like, and they can't really make it, and then he just like stares at them like, really?
And he disapproves. Yes, it's there's definitely a lot of fun character interactions at the Disney parks. For the most part, though, meeting characters does tend to get a pretty long line depending on who you want to meet. Like Mickey Mouse always has more than a 30-minute wait. Whereas when I went to Disneyland, he was just meeting out in the middle of the street. And so it's a little bit more controlled at Disney World, but that's one of the things you want to meet the characters, be prepared to wait in some of these long lines.
So any other characters you met?
No, aside from the stormtroopers, we were going to meet Darth Vader, but we actually ended up being late for a fast pass, so not this time. I'll say hi to him next time we go.
So about how many characters did you see at least?
Oh, we saw plenty of characters, especially with the parades. You can see them and they're waving to people. As far as like walk around characters, we saw Rey in Star Wars Land. Whenever you're in Toy Story Land, Buzz is walking around. We saw Woody and Bo Peep. And then there's a Green Army Men show where they just walk around. So I think that the characters are more frequently out at Hollywood Studios as compared to Magic Kingdom. Whereas at Magic Kingdom, they're in specific areas where you have to go to them instead of them just walking around. Now, they do have some character shows, like they have the Mickey's Friendship Fair at the front of the castle at certain points of the day where you can see a bunch of different characters. The deeper into the parks you go, the less characters you see, if that makes sense.
So I feel like Disney probably does a lot better with characters than Universal does.
Oh, 100%. Remember when we saw King Julian and there was no line to meet him? In fact, I think that's the only character I remember seeing besides the Raptor encounter, which that always gets a long line, but every other character, we saw Dr. Seuss characters just walking around with no line.
Yeah, I'm guessing, I in a way, I almost felt bad for them.
I know, you really want to go see Sam I Am, don't you? Because, he's just standing there in the hot sun, waiting for us to go see him.
All right, so what'd y'all eat on this trip?
So we ate 3 meals. On Hollywood Studios, we went to the Hollywood Backlot Express, where I had a bacon cheeseburger, and in Magic Kingdom, we went to Starlight Ray's Cosmic Cafe, where I had a chicken sandwich, and Pinocchio House, spelled Haus, the German theme, and I had a buffalo chicken flatbread pizza. All in all, I spent less than $20 per meal, which I was incredibly shocked by, Disney prices, because when we go to Six Flags, it's almost $30 for chicken strips, fries, and a drink at the Six Flags parks, versus the only time my bill was over $25 was when I got a Wookiee cookie at Hollywood Studios, which don't recommend. It's a very, very big cookie with a lot of whipped cream in the middle.
How about the quality of the food? How was it?
It's decent.
Is it like typical ballpark type food or typical theme park food?
Yeah, I mean, you can pay more for nicer food. So if you want to go to like Beauty and the Beast Castle, you'd be prepared to spend like $60 a meal though, because that's more gourmet. Or they have, I believe, the Crystal Palace in Magic Kingdom, where you can eat and meet and greet with Winnie the Pooh characters, and that's very expensive. But if you're just trying to get a burger, fries, and a drink, I mean, you can go to most places at Disney World and spend under $15. Just depends on where you go.
Did y'all get like a refillable cup or anything?
No, so actually, unlike most parks, you can actually bring food into the parks and drinks as well, so long as they're sealed. We learned this after we went to Hollywood Studios, where we bought a bunch of chips at a gas station, put it in my backpack, and you walk through the little scanners, they don't see anything. So we had, I'm not joking, 3 full bags of chips and a bag of donut holes we were eating at Magic Kingdom throughout the day.
So do they allow that, or is it just something they just didn't really check?
I think they allow it, because I have seen people bring like full sandwiches and go into Disney and eat, just because they do allow outside food and drinks so long as they're sealed.
Honestly, I think that's pretty nice of them. Like, honestly, if I owned a theme park, I probably would not do that at all.
Yeah, you force them to eat your overpriced food like Six Flags does.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what was the most memorable moments on this trip, or did you have any?
So the most memorable moment has to be when we were riding Tiana's Bayou Adventure. The ride actually, and it's funny because I haven't told you this yet, so we're saving it for the show. The ride actually got stuck midway through. So with Splash Mountain, now Tiana's Bayou Adventure, there's a couple drops before the big drop. We were on one of the drops beforehand, and we were stuck there for almost 30 minutes. And then we see the work lights come on, so it's no longer a dark ride. You still see all the animatronics moving, but the music comes off, and these cast members had to escort us out of Tiana's Bayou Adventure. What they did was they used a key, they unlocked the log and pulled the lap bar up, and they let us go out of the ride, and they let us, so we couldn't film anything, otherwise I would definitely put this on YouTube, but we had to walk out of down some stairs through Tiana's Bayou Adventure. We actually saw the back lot of Disney where they keep like the parade floats and where they probably have like staff break rooms and everything. So as the Disney nerd, that was really cool to see. And then there were people waiting outside to give us free fast passes, and that's how we were able to go on Pirates of the Caribbean and Peter Pan for less than a 5-minute wait, just because we were stuck on that ride for like well over 30 minutes.
Well, at least it wasn't too bad. What was the temperature, by the way, at the park?
So the first day was actually pretty cold. We were wearing jackets throughout most of the day. The high only got to 57 degrees. The second day was a lot warmer, where it got up to 65. At night, it still got cold, and we had to put the jackets back on. But for theme park wise, it was a pretty solid day. The only thing crazy that we would have done was ride Tiana's, which maybe was a good sign, because we probably would have gotten pretty wet and then stayed to watch the fireworks in the pretty cold.
So, would you recommend people going to Disney in February, or anywhere in Orlando, like Universal?
Yeah, because I think we went on an outlier day, because the previous day it was in the 80s, and then the day we were leaving it got up into the 70s. So for the most part, Orlando is a pretty, tropical area. It's not going to get really, really cold. I think there might be some days where it gets down into the 30s. I just think February is very hit or miss, and this is also twice now that I've gone where it's been, kind of cold, where you at least have to wear pants. I'd say the best time to go to Orlando, though, is in April, in early May. Kids are still in school, and spring break is already over. So you don't have this mass influx of people coming in and making the lines crazy.
Yeah, to me, that sounds better to me, because I'm not really a huge theme park like you are, Jack, of course, but I'm big in, of course, cruises. And I would not, in the middle of June or middle of July, be waiting in these lines with 1,000 kids with over 2-hour waits for some of these rides.
The longest wait we had to wait was actually Winnie the Pooh, funny enough.
Why'd you wait that long for that?
I don't know. Ask your brother. He's the one who suggested Winnie the Pooh, and we just went along with it. And it was a not even 1 minute long dark ride to see Winnie the Pooh and his adventures.
Well, y'all probably the oldest people there.
No, I wouldn't say that. There were definitely a bunch of Disney adults there, which we can get into on another topic. But the lines we had to wait in: Jungle Cruise, Tron, Space Mountain, 45 minutes ish. Winnie the Pooh was the only one that was an hour, which that shows how popular Winnie the Pooh still is.
Did you have any other memorable moments or any of the rides?
Riding Tron was definitely pretty spectacular, because the last time I went, they were still building it, and the hype around Tron was building up significantly. It's definitely the first ever motorcycle ride I have ever ridden, as far as a roller coaster goes, where you get strapped in to your back, and you're laying on the motorcycle and swaying back and forth. So that was the very unique ride experience I got to experience.
I know my brother said, and I'm sure other people feel like it was very uncomfortable riding that ride.
Yes, I mean, I am a bigger person, so it felt like a tight squeeze in there. So I can definitely see how that could be very uncomfortable. But if you haven't ridden Tron, I would definitely recommend at least riding it once and trying it out for yourself, because in my opinion, I'd say it's one of the top 5 best rides at Disney World now.
So if you could do anything different, what would it be?
I would have probably stayed for Fantasmic, but given the circumstance of it being really cold and there was a potential of rain where it would have been postponed, so that is why we left early. But had that not been the case, I probably would have stayed because that is a pretty spectacular show. But and maybe rode Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway. But other than that, I really have no regrets, and I think that we rode everything we wanted to within a reasonable time.
So, did you feel like you needed like a few more days, or was it the right amount of days?
For what we wanted to do, I think it was pretty spot on. People say that you can't do Disney in one day, and I disagree. So long as you are good with your time and do have the Lightning Lane passes, you certainly could ride almost everything, especially the big rides. What people, with kids, they most kids don't want to stay there from, open to close. And that, that makes them a little bit more difficult, and that would probably be why people spend multiple days there. Because, some kids are done by like noon or 1. I know your kids would probably be in that group.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like that probably in the middle of summer and stuff, you probably do need multiple days. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, especially because how hot it gets in Florida. Because if you get there, let's say at 9, and then by 2, it's sweltering heat and the humidity is really bad. The kids are probably ready to go back to the pool, which I don't blame them. And then you can always go to the hotel, then come back for the fireworks if you're staying on Disney property, which that's a good reason to stay on property for that reason.
So you're allowed to leave the park and come back?
Yes, is I think if you have the multi-day passes, if you do one park per day, I don't think so, to be honest. But if you have like the park hopper pass, then yes, you can come back and forth anytime you would like.
What I mean is like, if can you leave the park like if you want to go back to the hotel and relax for a little bit and then come back? Can you do the same day?
Yes, if you have the park hopper,
Oh,
because the
okay.
park hopper lets you go from park to park. So if you, let's say you wanted to start the day at Epcot and then go back to the hotel and then go to Magic Kingdom, the same principle applies if you went to Magic Kingdom, left to go back to the hotel, take a nap, and went back for the fireworks.
Okay, yeah, because I definitely would want to be there for rope drop, but in the middle of summer, I don't know if I can make it to rope drop to fireworks.
I've only ever gone to Disney before summer, so in January, February, March, and April. That's the only time I ever go. I went to Disneyland in October, and I think October is also a pretty good time to go because that's when the temperatures start getting cooler, and the Disney has the Halloween stuff out, like kind of like when we went to Universal in October.
So would you ever go back?
To do other parks, yes. Because I've gone to Magic Kingdom 4 times since 2018, there's not much more I want to do because I've essentially done everything. And same with Hollywood Studios, with the exception of Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway. The next time I go back to a Disney park, I actually want to go back to Epcot, and because I've never been to Epcot in the first place, and that new Guardians of the Galaxy coaster looks fantastic, and we'll hopefully have a review on that at some point, either this year or the following years. But I would like to go back to Epcot, but I'd also like to try out other parks in Orlando. Like I've never been to SeaWorld. I haven't been to Universal Studios in 2018, and I still need to eventually try Epic Universe.
So tell us about your flight back. How was that? How
Oh,
was going from Orlando back to Houston?
well, Orlando has some of the slowest TSA that I've ever witnessed. We waited in almost a 45-minute wait, and they rerouted us to a slower line. So we made it to our gate with essentially 10 minutes left to spare.
That's kind of crazy because when we went to Universal, when we go to Universal again?
October.
October. When we went to Universal in October, it was really fast, wasn't it? Remember?
Yeah, it's a weird time because, we left on a Wednesday, and when we left it was a Monday, so it's not that it was a busy day. I guess it was just, how they were staffed at that point in time. And like normally I never have a problem with with Orlando's airport, but it was just so behind that day. And then of course at the gate, your brother and his wife almost had to pay for their bags because they were pulled aside, and luckily the Spirit agent let them on because they knew the flight was about to take off after they put their backpacks in the measurement checker, which if you're flying Spirit, it makes sense that they want to check to see how big your bags are. But I mean, that's a rule they don't do at every airport, which is the sad thing.
Yeah, I definitely think that because we, of course, me and you've never had the issue in Houston. I'm thinking that it's because it's kind of like where their headquarters are. That I'm sure management walks that particular airport a lot more than others.
Right. And when I went to Miami, very close to where their headquarters in Fort Lauderdale, we couldn't even get through the TSA line without them checking my backpack. And, I went for spring training, so I had a glove, multiple jerseys, multiple baseballs. Like, I had way too much stuff in that backpack for it to be, a quote personal item. So they made me pay the $90 for a carry-on bag, which I think is absurd. And I think sometimes it might just be better to pay for a check bag so that way Spirit doesn't do this to you. But also, I've had an instance in Las Vegas where my friend had multiple bags, and I told her, hey, just put your bag in another bag and we won't charge you. So it's very hit or miss as far as Spirit goes, if they want to charge you for the carry-on bag or not.
And you said you had, for the car rental, you got new, right?
Yes, and it was a simple process to drop it off. You just give them the key, and they take a look at it, and they say you're good to go. So yes, no yellow poles were hit on this trip.
Just a yellow curb?
Just a yellow curb. Hey, they didn't charge you for that yellow. We'll talk about that another time when a certain rental car got damaged in Washington, D.C.
So to kind of take a step back, I forgot to ask you, did you get any souvenirs?
Yes, I'm a collector of magnets, so I, of course, got some magnets for the fridge, and, I found some cool Disney pins, which, fun thing I found out, they still do pin training. So what pin training is, to those of you that don't know, you can go to any souvenir shop or gift shop, and you can trade a pin you have with a cast member, and they can swap out a pin completely for free. And sometimes, let's say you have an Alice in Wonderland pin and you want a Little Mermaid pin, they'll do that. It's just whatever they have is available. And the really expensive pins they probably won't have, but you never know.
Did you see anyone buy an Iron Man mask?
No, I did see some people buy some lightsabers and droids, though. So the droids are, according to my calculations, $120 for a little remote control droid at Star Wars, and a lightsaber is still over $200, which, imagine trying to bring that on a Spirit flight. I think you'd have to check that multiple times.
They would probably say it's some weapon or something. You have to check it.
Yeah, you got to put it in the bottom of the plane. Otherwise, you'd be detained for bringing a lightsaber on a Spirit flight.
All right, so to finish up everything, so what's one last thing you'd like to say about this trip?
If you haven't tried Disney, I would recommend at least trying it once. Is it pricey? Yes. The price we paid per person was about $380 for tickets. Of course, flight $50, rental car $180, hotel was around $120 a night. So, I mean, yes, it does add up over time, but I mean, it's essentially the same as if you were going to, a different destination in the United States, with the exception, of course, of Vegas. So if you haven't ever done a Disney trip and you would like to do it, I would recommend at least trying it once. And that'll do it for this week's episode of the Lido Loop. As always, you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Podcasts, and wherever you get your podcasts from. And of course, the YouTube channel is the Lido Loop. I'm Jack. That's Jesse. And we will see you
on the Lido deck
or riding Tron.
Thank you for watching this episode of Lido Loop. Like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you're notified every time we post more content.